First tonight on Our News, live at 7, a double shooting at Ferguson Street off Propel Track leaves 2 men dead as police search for the culprits. Plus, former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried speaks up about the company's Bahamian employees. You'll see it on just one station. The public health care system facing a critical shortage of hundreds of nurses. The PHA chief explains how it's impacting service at the public hospital. And then in Our News at 7:30, why the public service minister is describing recent union action as unnecessary and disrespectful. Our News live at 7 starts now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. Investigators are probing a double homicide they say happened early this morning. According to police, the 2 young men, one believed to be in his late teens and the other in his early 20s, were shot and killed through Ferguson Street just after 8 a.m. We are told that one of the victims was known to police. Press Liaison Chief Superintendent Kristen Skipping sharing this much from the initial investigation.
Well, shortly after 8 a.m., our department was notified of a double shooting incident here at Ferguson Street, just off West Bay Street. Our initial investigations thus far reveal that 2 males, the occupants of a gray Hyundai Touring, had recently pulled into the parking lot just here on Ferguson Way when 2 males exited a small white vehicle, both of whom were armed with weapons. They opened fire on the vehicle, hitting both males multiple times. Both of the men succumbed to their injuries on scene.
Those murders bringing this year's homicides to 125. That's 6 more than last year's count. We've got the full story coming up in Our News at 7:30. And the crime fight continuing as police say they've taken a number of firearms off the streets in the past few weeks. Just recently, police attempted to stop a speeding vehicle on JFK Highway. They say the vehicle failed to stop, prompting a police chase. Eventually, the vehicle was stopped, and officers say they found 5 firearms along with a large amount of ammunition. Chief Superintendent Skipping's calling on parents and guardians to do their part.
To parents and guardians who may see their family members with stolen goods or firearms, you're just as guilty as your family members. And let me say to you, especially with housebreaking, if the police were to come to your homes, there's stolen property inside your home. You may not know that it was stolen when you purchased it, but the law allows us to charge you for receiving. So it means then that you're just as guilty as the person who actually committed the offense of stealing.
And to those purchasing items during the holiday season for a good deal, the Chief Superintendent says,
they want to sell you a 75-inch TV for $300, or they have some other game that, the price just is not right. You decide to settle for it and purchase it. Once the police come there and we find it, we will confiscate the item and you will be placed before the courts for receiving. So I want to encourage residents of this beautiful place we call home. This is our place. This is our home. We can only make it as good as we want it to be.
And now to this story that we've been following. It's a problem that continues to persist, a critical shortage of nurses in the public health care system. It's prompting the PHA managing director to speak out again. Berthany McDermott reports.
The newest review of the Public Hospitals Authority's manpower needs revealing they are in dire need of 600 nurses. Public Hospitals Authority Managing Director Dr. Arbonette Roll says what makes it worse is the shortage comes as the Princess Margaret Hospital is bursting at the seams.
Based on all of the institutions underneath the Public Hospitals Authority, that is Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, Princess Margaret Hospital, and Grand Bahama, we have a deficit of 600 plus nurses.
The Bahamas is not alone. There is also a worldwide shortage of healthcare professionals. On Sunday, PHA entered an agreement with Doctors Hospital to transfer 50 patients from PMH to Doctors Hospital West. Roll says this too helps with relieving the pressure on the already strained healthcare workers.
So even in this move, we have the ability for Doctors Hospital to help us with those critical areas that we have a deficit in terms of nursing, laboratory, imaging, pharmacy, caring for those patients there. But we have a critical crisis.
Amid the long-time issue, the Ministry of Health and Wellness welcomed 50 Cuban nurses into the public healthcare system earlier this year to help carry the load. This as other countries use the local healthcare system to shop for nurses to fill their shortages. As a result, Rhodes says they're aggressively looking to close the gap.
The government moved very expeditiously in trying to encourage the nurses to stay home. And that's why we were very successful with our negotiations a few months ago. And they got a retention bonus and other things to sort of, encourage them to remain home. So while the government moves on that end, we're trying to ensure that where they come to work every day is safe and they can provide the quality of care.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Thanks, Berthany, and we've got more from that exclusive interview with Sam Bankman-Fried coming up in just a moment. But for now, we head over to the Weather Center where meteorologist Ian McKenzie is standing by with your first look at temperatures across the islands. Ian?
Thanks, Gandino, and good evening, Bahamas, on this fabulous Friday. Currently outside our studios, we're under mostly clear skies with a temperature of 78. Your winds are out of the north at 8 miles per hour with a feels-like temperature of 80. Current temperatures across the country at this time: in Freeport, we have 74, 76 in Marsh Harbor, 79 in Allenstown, Bimini, 80 in Great Harbor Key, a pair of 78s in Governor's Harbor and in the capital, and 75 in Nicholstown, Andros. In the central Bahamas, 76 in Camps Bay, 80 in Arthurstown, Kidd Island, 76 in Coburn Town, St. Salvador, 79 in Georgetown, and 77 in Deadman's Key, Long Island. In the southeast Bahamas, we have 80 in Duncantown, a pair of 76 in Colonel Hill, Crooked Island, and Delectable Bay, Acklands, as well as 76 in Abraham's Bay, 77 in Matthewtown, and also in Providenciales, our neighbors to the south, rounding up our temperature profile for this evening. Current satellite and radar imagery at this time: few clouds and spotty showers associated with this front that's parked just north of our area. Not much to talk about. That should wash out over the next several hours. Outside of that, a few showers popping up here and there across the central and southeast Bahamas. High pressure remains the dominant weather feature across us, and that should continue to control our weather pattern into early next week. That's your first look at weather. Stay tuned. More is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, an exclusive chat with former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried about the company's Bahamian staff. How is gender-based violence being addressed in the country? A forum examines the way forward. Plus, are big changes on the way for maternity leave? One midwife gives her take. It's all coming up when Our News returns. Sam Bankman-Fried says he is willing to testify before the U.S. House Committee on December 13th. The embattled founder and former CEO of FTX Digital Markets tweeting the news on Friday as regulators investigate his role in the wake of its collapse. Just yesterday, House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters told Reuters she is prepared to subpoena Bankman-Fried if he does not agree to appear before the panel. In an exclusive interview with Jerome Sawyer airing this Sunday at 8 p.m., Bankman-Fried claiming he still does not have access to much of his data, limiting what he'll be able to say. Since the implosion last month, global prosecutors and regulators have not charged Bankman-Fried with any crime. We've also learned that he has been questioned by local authorities. Also, caught up in this financial fiasco, are his former employees.
How's your staff doing? Have you been in touch with your staff?
I've been in touch with some of them. I mean, some of them are still working with, all of the global teams that are trying to fight through this. And I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for everything that all of the staff has done over the last, 3 years. I'm floored by what some of the staff is doing right now to try and keep supporting the company. Even now, it's incredibly, an incredibly strong move, but it's a tough time for a lot of the staff. Like, this is what their life was. They'd given everything they had to it. A lot of them lost money in it, and as much as that, a lot of them had poured their soul into this and had been, fighting for it over the last 3 years, and that's a really tough position for them to be in, and I feel really, really bad for that.
Do you feel a sense of personal responsibility for what they're going through?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I was CEO. It means that I had responsibility to our customers. It means I had responsibility to our staff, and up until a month ago, I felt like I was always going to be in a position to do right by staff, and now I'm not sure I am.
The full 1-hour special with Jerome Sawyer airs this Sunday at 8 p.m. and will stream live on the Our News Bahamas Facebook page. More than $1 million still owed to teachers across the country in back pay, and the head of the Bahamas Union of Teachers is calling for them to be paid. Jamila Mizik reports.
An estimated $1.5 million in back pay still owed to BUT members. That's according to Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson.
Some of those persons were owed now 20 years, 15 years, 10 years.
The union president says teachers are the heartbeat of the country's education system, which is why it is important for the government to ensure that teachers' needs are met.
When you do not pay an employee their rightful salary, that impacts their standard of living. That impacts what it is they can provide for their children. That impacts when you go into the food store where the prices are rising daily. What do you buy? So it impacts their whole life.
And as experts are predicting a global recession next year, it is unclear how teachers will be able to cope with smaller salaries and the increasing cost of living. Wilson had this to say.
Government has to show through their action that they're preparing for a global recession, because the way how they're spending money, the way how they're traveling, we don't see where the government has tightened their belt. So we don't expect for them to tell teachers who are going to the Family Island, and inclusive of Grand Bahama, the nation's second city, to pull back, to tighten the belt, to decrease benefits for our teachers when the government is just spending. So the spending should be on education.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
Well, the Department of Gender and Family Affairs and the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development wrapping up a number of events held during the month to commemorate 16 days of activism. Department officials hosting a monthly forum today with representatives of non-governmental organizations and others. Retired Superintendent of Police Elaine Sands says this final forum aims to discuss the way forward in addressing gender-based violence across the country.
What we're going to do this afternoon is we're going to go do an overview over our projects, some of our accomplishments during the year, and also we are looking to see what we're going to do in 2023 to step up our programs, our initiatives to prevent gender-based violence. And it's in all spheres, not only against women, against men, against boys and girls.
She says one of the upcoming projects includes the implementation of a gender-based violence Family Island Council.
We really do not want to leave the family islands out, because we know that some abuses happen in isolation, and some of the victims are silent. Some of the perpetrators, they get away with it. And so we really would like to tighten up our resolve, not only in New Providence, but also in the Family Islands. So hopefully early in the new year, we have already conducted training in conjunction with the Family Island administrators. And so one of the first islands that we have identified is Abaco.
And still talking gender issues, the Bahamas National Breastfeeding Association leading the charge to increase the national maternity leave from 13 weeks to 20 weeks. Tonight, a midwife and member of the association speaking exclusively with our Megan Shepherd on why every Bahamian should push for this increase.
Anna Forbes has been a registered nurse for more than 40 years and a midwife for 22 years. She says she is passionate about pushing the government to increase the maternity leave to 20 weeks. She says in order to maximize the current 12-week leave, some women work as close to their due date as possible, which is not always healthy.
Most mothers walk into labor tired, fatigued, exhausted, stressed out.
She says the benefits of allowing more time at home with a new baby are priceless.
Being able to bond with her baby, we know that it not only improves her, that time, having a time to do that, not only improves her physical well-being, health, her emotional well-being, all of that. Also for the baby, it's that connection, that bonding that is irreplaceable. There's also for the mother benefit, it lessens the chance of her experiencing postpartum depression.
Forbes says she's hopeful the government will move in this direction sooner rather than later.
There are lots of us that are passionate about it because we know, we have the facts, we know it's beneficial.
Now, Forbes also notes that while 20 weeks is a good start, it is still not enough, as several international bodies recommend at least 6 months maternity leave. Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as a United Nations report estimates 60% of Haiti's capital is controlled by gangs. Plus, on this day in 1971, a piece of legislation led to the preservation of public records in the Bahamas. And later, the Sting Junkanoo Group prepares to return to Bay Street. We'll tell you how this year will be extra special for the mature Junkanoo Group. We've got the details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. 10 months after she left the United States to play basketball in Russia, WNBA star Brittany Griner has landed in her home state of Texas. She was jailed in February, just days before Russia invaded Ukraine, for carrying cannabis oil at a Moscow airport. On Thursday, President Joe Biden first announced that Griner was returning home on Thursday in exchange for Russian arms dealer Victor Bout. A Backstreet Boys Christmas special has been pulled by U.S. TV network ABC following news that a woman is suing singer Nick Carter, alleging he raped her during a 2001 tour when she was just 17. 39-year-old Shannon Ruth on Thursday filed a civil case in Las Vegas, Carter's lawyers saying it was legally meritless and entirely untrue. A very Backstreet holiday was slated to run on December 14th, but is no longer listed in ABC's Holiday Specials Guide. Violent attacks targeting Nigeria's election commission offices are raising concerns about the security of the West African country's upcoming elections in February. In the latest attack, assailants in southeastern Imo State set fire on Sunday to an office of Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission. Nearly 50 of the commission's offices already have reportedly been destroyed since Nigeria's last election in 2019. Violence has often hit Nigerian elections, with at least 800 killed in 2011. The UN humanitarian chief in Haiti says close to 60% of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, is dominated by gangs whose violence and sexual attacks have caused thousands to flee their homes. Ulrika Richardson says nearly 20,000 people in the capital are facing catastrophic famine-like conditions as a cholera outbreak spreads throughout Haiti. She said close to 12,000 people have been hospitalized with the disease since October 2nd, and there are now a total of more than 14,000 suspected cases. And the Guyanese government has opened a new round of auctions for its 14 oil blocks in the country's lucrative offshore oil and gas fields. President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali says his government plans to complete the bidding process by April and have contracts signed by the end of May 2023. The 14 blocks are located in both deep and shallow waters. He says there will be a minimum signature bond requirement, or bonus requirement that is, of $10 million for shallow water and $20 million for deep water blocks. Still to come in our news today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was December 9th and the 1985 death of a former educator, pastor, politician, and cabinet minister. We'll tell you who coming up. Plus, Ian is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, we'll tell you how many potholes the Ministry of Work says have been patched over the past 5 months. The story when our news returns. Welcome back to Our News. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was December 9th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 1838, George Cumin Strahan, who served as colonial secretary in the Bahamas, was born in Scotland. Strahan served as colonial secretary from 1868 to 1872 and acting governor from 1872 to 1873. Then in 1971, the Public Records Act commenced. The act caused the establishment of the Public Records Office and the preservation of public records in the Bahamas. On December 9, 1985, Carlton E. Francis died of complications from diabetes. He was 66. Francis was an educator, pastor, politician, and cabinet minister. In 1965, he became first vice chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party. 2 years later, he was elected to the House of Assembly, representing the Winton constituency, and served as Minister of Finance from 1967 to 1970, when he was appointed Minister of Education and Minister of Development from 1972 to 1973. Francis resigned from the cabinet that year due to his opposition to gambling. The primary school on New Providence was named in his honor. Fast forward to 2004, the first Bahamas International Film Festival opened in Nassau, founded by Leslie Vanderpool. The festival, which was held from December 9th through 12th, featured a diverse presentation of independent and studio films from around the world, as well as educational programs and cultural events. Then in world history, in 1979, some 10 years after the World Health Organization began a global vaccination program against smallpox, the disease was officially declared eradicated. In 2002, United Airlines filed for bankruptcy, the largest such case ever in the global airline industry after high costs left the world's #2 carrier with too much debt and little cash. And finally, in 2016, South Korean President Park Chung-hee was impeached by the National Assembly amid allegations of corruption. She left office the following year after the country's constitutional court upheld the parliamentary decision. All right, well, you know their songs and some of their signature moves, and now a more mature Junkanoo group is fired up and ready for the return to Bay. From what I understand, Christina Dragovich even tried to learn a move or two. Let's take a look at Sting.
Sting founder Bernard B.H. Hanna welcomed Our News to the group's practice grounds way before practice for the Boxing and New Year's Day parades began.
We start our rally, our Junkanoo preparation, like 2 or 3 days before Junkanoo. Come as you are. But once we have our song, we try to depict what the lyrics of the song.
BH says that song is what drives the theme for the group, which is all about fun.
The acronym for Sting is Striving Together in National Growth, STING. That is what we're all about, and it's simply fun.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Christina Dragovich.
All right, thanks a lot, Christina. Well, that does it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is our Natalia Holm. She's got the latest headlines. Natalia?
Yes, Ken. Well, Junkanoo is approaching. Are you ready? You see Christina, she's getting her moves together.
I was going to say, do you think Christina will pull any of those moves at the staff party?
We will see tonight. But Ken, coming up in News Tonight, police are investigating an early morning murder in New Providence and the public service minister and the union's leader in a back and forth.
First tonight on Our News at 7:30, one of this morning's murder victims was being electronically monitored, according to police,
what
they are revealing about the possible weapons used in this murder. Plus, the public service minister and the union's leader in a back and forth after the union took their issues to Parliament Square earlier this week. And later, Alive makes the season special for the workers at Abilities Unlimited. We'll show you how on Our News at 7:30. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. 2 men gunned down after being ambushed in a quiet West Bay Street community this morning. While the assailants are unknown, police say one of the victims were being electronically monitored. Our News was on the scene. Marlena Leonard reports.
The murder count rose by 2 this morning as 2 young men were gunned down mercilessly just off of West Bay Street. You can see the scene behind us, the car they were driving that they never made it out of. It was a chilling scene on Ferguson Road this morning, the location of the nation's latest homicides. As crime scene investigators worked to document the scene, music still boomed from the ill-fated vehicle, only occasionally interrupted by attempted calls to the victim's phone connected through the Bluetooth speaker. Police Press Liaison Officer Chief Superintendent Chrislyn Skippings was on the scene.
2 males, The occupants of a gray Hyundai Touring had recently pulled into the parking lot just here on Ferguson Way when two males exited a small white vehicle, both of whom were armed with weapons. They opened fire on the vehicle, hitting both males multiple times. Both of the men succumbed to their injuries on scene.
Evidence markers carpeted the ground leading to the bullet-riddled vehicle. Skipping shared that it's currently believed that the weapons used were high-powered firearms. Skippings added that the victims, believed to be in their late teens and early 20s, aren't thought to be residents of the area. When asked if either of the victims were known to police,
one of them is out on bail for possession of fire. Again, one of the persons are outfitted with an ankle monitoring device.
These murders have brought the 2022 murder count to 125. That's 6 more than the 119 murders of 2021 and over 50 above the 73 murders of the year before. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Thanks, Marlena. Well, a man who exposed himself on a public beach has been placed on probation for 6 months. Police arrested 23-year-old Richard Rolle on December 6 after receiving a complaint about a man who was flashing his genitals on Saunders Beach. In an interview with police, Rolle acknowledged that he had walked along the beach with a black sock covering his private area. Rolle pleaded guilty to indecent exposure and apologized for his actions when he appeared before Magistrate Samuel McKinney. If Rolle is convicted of any offense while on probation, he will have to pay a $500 fine to avoid serving a 1 month's prison sentence. 23 pounds of marijuana confiscated over in Grand Bahama. Police say the drugs have an estimated street value of $31,500. The drugs were found between the early morning hours on Thursday after officers searched a vessel at the Freeport Harbor. 12 packages of suspected marijuana were found. No arrests have been made in connection with the incident, and investigations are continuing. Meanwhile, 16 days of activism will come to an end on December 10th, Human Rights Day. One of the main topics, end the gender-based killing of women and girls. Our Jamila Mizik has more in a report coming up in Our News, the Weekend Edition. While discussions on laws about marital rape have been ongoing for months, this after the one-day symposium held in September for amendments to the Sexual Offenses Bill. We asked Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe for an update on talks with pastors. Wilchcombe told us they are waiting to hear back from the Bahamas National Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention.
We want to make sure that whatever we do it right the first time. And that is why it might take a bit longer, but that's okay. I'm not concerned too much about that once we're moving in the right direction. And so we are. And I expect to hear from them early next year.
And when we asked if there was any kind of deadline for feedback from the pastors, Wilchcombe told us.
No deadline, because we didn't want to create that pressure. We wanted to make sure that all understood that we were trying to row the boat together. We want to get to where we have to go, but collectively, not what we're fighting against. The advocates are there, the voices are being heard, the women, we've heard them, but there have been concerns, and so we have to hear the concerns. We have to hear the cultural concerns. We have all the concerns. Once they are brought to us and we're able to sit down with legal minds and create the right language, I think it's going to come down to the right language. I think the language will determine how we move.
Pleasant conditions outside the Our News studios this evening. Forecaster Ian McKenzie joins us from the Weather Center with the latest. Ian?
Thanks, Natalia, and good evening, Bahamas. Here's your first look at weather for this evening. Currently outside our studios, we're under mostly clear skies with a temperature of 78 degrees. Your winds are out of the north at 8 miles per hour with a feels-like temperature of 79. Taking a look at our satellite and radar composite at this time, a few clouds associated with a weak front that's just parked north of our area. This system should continue to weaken over the next several hours. Outside of that, a few clouds hanging around across the central and southeast Bahamas, which could trigger 1 or 2 showers. High pressure remaining the dominant weather feature across our area, producing mostly stable conditions into the weekend. That's your first look at weather. Stay tuned, more is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, major roadworks ahead for New Providence as government reveals plans for 50 roads over the next 2 years. But first, we'll tell you how the Public Service Minister is calling recent union action unnecessary and disrespectful. And later, we visit Abilities Unlimited, where priceless pieces are created. We take you along when our news continues.
Unnecessary and disrespectful is how the Public Service Minister is describing the BPSU's approach to the acting Prime Minister this week. But the BPSU president is hitting back, saying even after the demonstration, the union has received nothing. Berthany McDermott reports.
Days after peeved members of the Bahamas Public Services Union took their concerns to the streets, Public Service Minister Fred Mitchell is speaking out on the issue.
On Wednesday, passed a display where they confronted the Deputy Prime Minister on the steps of the street in a hostile fashion was unnecessary and disrespectful. A matter and matters which can be settled privately. All of those things could have been done privately.
On Wednesday, unionists said their approach was the only way to get a proper response from the government, as multiple letters and emails has gone unanswered. Today, Ferguson hit back to that claim with this.
During the course of time when this administration was in opposition, they would answer your call on the second ring. Today, you call their phones, they don't answer at all.
The union decried what they're calling stalled negotiations with government as they seek to meet to sign its industrial agreement. Additionally, Union President Kingsley Ferguson also decried salary increases for multiple senior public servants. Despite the demonstration, Mitchell maintains the delay in signing the industrial agreements wasn't the government's fault.
We were ready, but it appears that it was driven by some other agenda or reasons. The social partner wanted to pick a public fight.
Since the demonstration Wednesday, Ferguson said the union met with the Ministry of Labor looking to get those finished documents, but he says they are still empty-handed. He says members are fed up, adding that the membership will decide the next steps.
Members are disgruntled, impatient, angry in a serious way because they now understand that while the blame was being levied on their leader, they are clear now where the blame rests.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
The planned 60-megawatt solar plant for Bahamas Power and Light is expected to lower BPL's fuel costs by $30 million. BPL CEO Siobhan Cambridge explains.
When the minister mentioned the 60-megawatt project, we estimate that that will reduce our fuel bill by some $25 to $30 million a year once completed. What does that mean? All of these will result in a lower fuel charge for you.
Now the government has set a goal to achieve 30% renewable energy by 2030. The plan is to build solar microgrids on the Family Islands as well. Amid supply chain issues, the BPL CEO is saying BPL is ramping up maintenance.
We envision that that will also allow us, without getting too technical, to produce more power on the cheaper fuels and to actually have the alternative of switching between the various fuels that we use depending on market prices.
Well, over the next 2 years, 50 roads in New Providence will get a facelift. According to officials from the Ministry of Works and Utilities, among the roads to receive repairs will be Joe Farrington Road, East Street South, and between Wolf Road and Palm Tree Avenue. And in some instances, work has already begun.
We've literally patched over the past 5 months almost 2,000 locations, like actual holes. So that's about 340 holes per month. And even then, I still haven't gotten all the information of where else that we've patched. And that'll be done with an audit.
Now, the pothole situation has been a vexing issue for many who have suffered car problems because of them. Hepburn says addressing the issue is a daunting task, especially considering there is an existing backlog.
Starting from the pandemic, heading onwards, supply chain issues with getting materials, both for asphalt and for even equipment, because you couldn't, just like how we had issues, people have issues bringing cars and mechanical equipment, all of that impacts our timeline.
When our news comes back from the break, a special donation goes a long way for Abilities Unlimited. That story straight ahead.
Plus, coming up in sports for this evening, the Bahamas continuing their struggles at the Caribbean Cup as they go down to Puerto Rico big time, but now headed to the semifinals, hoping to turn things around. We'll give you details on that coming up in sports tonight.
But first, the oldest and active member of the Valley Boys is still going strong. Our Sasha Lightborn has his story when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. Bradley Pratt has been shaking cowbells for over 5 decades and is the oldest and active member of the Valley Boys. He spoke with our Sasha Lightborn about his rushing experience over the years.
Bradley Pratt believes that music is the most important aspect of Junkanoo.
When you really want to build, I don't think you decide. I think it decides for you. You know, this is where you fit in. And once you decide that and it fits in, you just go and do what you got to do. There's just a joy to it. You go out there and just ring. You could ring forever because you like it.
And to him, the most important part of the music, otherwise known as the backline, is the cowbell section.
Without them, it can't go. It just can't go. You see, you need them bells because the bells going to keep those guys, hey, you know, they can give you the drum and music and the bells going to be there to keep that rhythm going for you. So without them, you can't go. You need your bells.
Reporting for our news, I'm Sasha Lightborn.
All right, great story, Brad. And another tough loss for Team Bahamas at the Caribbean Cup. Meanwhile, local basketball gears is up for weekend play. Marcellus Hall is up now with a check on sports.
All right, thanks, Natalia. Welcome to our sports on a Friday, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Well, Team Bahamas back in action last night as the Caribbean Cup baseball tournament continued at the Andre Rogers Baseball Diamond. Bahamas going up against Puerto Rico. And, well, they would get off once again to a bit of a slow start. Puerto Rico would strike first in the top of the first for a run. They would add runs again in the third and fourth inning, another 2 in the sixth, and then added 2 more in the 8th inning. Bahamas would try to struggle. They would get a couple of runs as well in the bottom of the second. But after that, that would be all she wrote. Puerto Rico adds 7 more runs in the ninth. They go on to win 14-2. That ends up being the final. The Bahamas now moves into the semifinals with a 1-3 win-loss record. Action is set to continue tomorrow night with semifinal play. We'll see how Bahamas does there. Hopefully, they can get on the winning track at just the right time. They have not won since the beginning of the tournament when they took away Game 1 in come-from-behind fashion against the U.S. Virgin Islands. Meanwhile, New Providence Basketball Association set to continue play tonight. Let's see what's on the schedule for you as they get ready to continue play. Again, over at AF Radley, starting with Division I play. This is going to be a feature contest here this evening. The Rebels Their Division II team taking on the Discount Distributors Rockets. That game comes your way at 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, in Division I, here's your feature contest. This comes your way right afterwards. Sandollar will take on the Atlanta Regulators. That is what's on store for you tonight. We'll give you details from both of those games coming up as soon as the results come in. And that's your look at sports here on a Friday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Enjoy your weekend. Back to you, Italia.
Still ahead on our news tonight, we'll tell you how Alive's engineering department spreads chair at Abilities Unlimited. And don't go away just yet. Your extended weather planner is straight ahead when our news continues. Welcome back to our news. Partly sunny and pleasant conditions ahead this weekend as we count down to the holidays. Ian is back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast.
Thanks, Italia. Welcome back, everyone, to our extended forecast. In our satellite loop, we have a few clouds associated with a weak frontal system just parked north of our area. This should continue to wash out over the next several hours. Outside of that, high pressure will remain the dominant weather feature, producing mostly fair and stable conditions into the weekend and into early next week. For your boating forecast, small craft operators are still being reminded to remain in or near port due to those northeasterly swells. Your winds will be north to northeast at 10 to 15 knots, with seas running 2 to 4 feet rather, but up to 7 to 11 feet in those moderate to large northeasterly swells. You can expect a high tide at 8:35 p.m. this evening. Here's a look at your national forecast. And in your extended forecast, expect those pleasant conditions to persist into next week, courtesy of high pressure. However, this high pressure system should begin to slide east of our area by mid to the end of next week, as we expect a strong cold front to move in and usher things down with cooler temperatures a bit. High temperatures expected to be in the low 80s through next week, with our lows into the upper 60s to low 70s. That puts a wrap on your forecast for this evening. Make it a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks so much, Ian. Well, Cable Bahamas group of companies doing its part to spread joy this holiday season. Alive's engineering department making a donation to Abilities Unlimited. Our intern, Joshua Williams, has more on this.
Alive spreading a little Christmas joy today, stopping by Abilities Unlimited, a non-profit organization that provides work for disabled adults. The engineering department making a donation to the center to assist in its daily operations. Vice President of Engineering and Technology Tracy Boucher says this is just one of several community initiatives for the company this holiday season.
We're going around to all of the senior homes, the children's homes, the disability centers, just to spread the joy and the love this Christmas. We all need joy, we all need love in our lives, so it's all about showing our appreciation.
Center Manager Hazel Burke expressing her gratitude for the partnership, noting that they rely heavily on donations from corporate Bahamas and local residents.
We depend a lot on donations from the public. We get a small grant from the government through the Ministry of Social Services, but we depend for the donations that we could get from corporate Bahamas as well. Alive started partnering with us last year. They have been doing some things for us along the way, and we are very appreciative.
Renville Dorset says his disability does not stop him from carrying out his duties.
It's very important that I keep my mind focused on the job and everything, and keep in mind far from other things. It's not too hard, but it's very easy to keep things focused and how to keep your mind far from other things.
Reporting for our news, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, great initiative, and thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.